break, Harry Lipsig had just made a point about capital punishment, saying how many times when somebody is really in a rage did they stop themselves short because of the fear of capital punishment as a deterrent. Now, you say this is nonsense.
Yes.
To me, that makes sense, though. It makes sense if somebody were afraid of having their life taken away, they wouldn't do something. It seems, to me personally, it would be a great deterrent.
What if I told you I was going to put you in life imprisonment? Would that be any less of a deterrent? And you knew you were going to get life imprisonment.
You mean I was going to be there?
Yeah.
But well, I'd rather do that than fry. I mean, given the
sure?
Positive.
Death.
Positive.
Death
is it. I mean, I could sit around and read in prison, but
in solitary?
Well, that's probably all I'd have to do in solitary.
No, you couldn't.
No reading in solitary?
I know,
it's very dark, it's very unpleasant.
But when you're
yes.
alive, hope springs eternal. And there's always the hope that one will get out of one's jam. But when one contemplates the cutting off of life and that everything is ended for one, I cannot, in the exercise of whatever reasoning powers I may have, conceive of any greater detriment than, of course, to bring about the cessation of life.
But you'll come back and say what? That it isn't a detriment.
Of course it isn't. And every study has shown that it isn't a detriment. And every study has shown that in states like Michigan, which did not have capital punishment, compared to surrounding states, there was no higher crime rate, no higher murder rate. When people are in this murderous rage that Harry refers to, if you suddenly come in and find your wife in some flagrant affair with somebody else and you're in a murderous rage, you don't stop and say, will I get 20 years, will I get 30 years, or will they hang me?
You don't think a person stops.
No.
They just go forward when they're in that rage.
And yet, how do you account for the greatest fear of all that all we human beings have? The fear of the loss of our lives.
I don't think it is the greatest fear. I think
you know,
every man has different fears. I think that...
Well, we speak in the average.
How many of these murderers, if you put in capital punishment, how many of them were executed? What percentages?
Very few.
Very few. And what percentages here in New York above a lower socioeconomic group were ever executed?
Yes, an excellent point, because there are many people, if capital punishment came back, who say that the only ones who are really going to be the victims of capital punishment are the poor, are the ones who really can't afford the great attorneys to defend themselves.
That's right.
To get a lesser
If you can
rap.
afford a Harry Lipsig,
Here, here.
you won't go.
He's in
And
favor.
that's
Who wants him as your attorney? He's in favor of capital punishment.
It helps business.
It's a terrible
It helps business.
situation.
Helps business.
I wouldn't want that.
Well, I'd hardly go to the extent of assisting in the execution of my own clients.
You wouldn't show up at the thing.
But on this subject of very few being convicted, bear in mind that every jury bespeaks the conscience of its own community.
It should,
and you know,
yes.
in that regard, I'm going to tell you something that may
You're right.
surprise you. You take the city of New York with its 5 boroughs. Each one of those boroughs has a different personality, and I have on occasion said that this case should be brought in this county because you lose it in the other county, and in these 5 counties so close together, the differences in viewpoint on the average are such that I can predict on occasion what a jury will do in a particular case in each county because of their differences.
Harry, let me bring back a boring subject, the subject of statistics.
Nothing you say would ever be boring.
Thank you, Harry.
I could see you guys in court. You'd be terrific.
Well,
But what are the statistics?
the statistics show that almost every execution in this country was done of someone from a lower political economic strata, usually a minority member. If someone has money, and we can go through the famous cases from when they had Clarence Darrow and the Loeb case, the whole way down. You can see the defenses which are being put up in many prominent cases we have today because people have money and influence. So who are you really punishing?
Oh, well, isn't that the basis of the decision in Furman against Georgia, where the Supreme Court of the United States abolished it?
No.
And didn't they abolish it in that case not on moral grounds, but because of the very thing that you pointed out, that the administration of it resulted in an unfortunate conviction of people of the lower classes. And yet today...
No, Harry, that it wasn't the reason. I wish they would have followed my reasoning, but I just don't seem to have that as much influence as you would give me. The reasoning was of its unpredictability. The fact that...
For the same reason, namely for the same result.
Well, the unpredictability is due to many, many factors. I'm saying let's have punishment that people know if they commit a certain crime, they will be punished, and not 2 or 3 years down. Right. Like Carol Chessman was around so long, I think he almost went on Social Security.
Well, isn't that the protection of the innocent? That all of the forces that
you worry about the innocent? What about the Christie case in England when an innocent man was hanged and they later found out he didn't do the crime? Death, as you pointed out, is final.
That's right.
That's another objection to capital punishment.
And it's final for all of the many victims of it. and they are to be considered. And you know the
Will it
trouble
bring
with-
back one of them?
The trouble, yes, if it acts as a deterrent, and you quote statistics. You know, statistics have been used in every type of situation. I have learned to distrust statistics. It's who uses them, how they collate them, and how they use them. I throw statistics in the average situation out the window unless it's something where it's 2 and 2 equals 4. Beyond that, it can always be used as a basis for whatever viewpoint one may have. And no matter what you say, fear of the loss of life is the basis of all of our existence in everyday living.
Don't you think that fear of certainty of punishment and the swiftness of punishment would have a greater deterrent effect?
No, not if the punishment can be the loss of my very valued life, valuable to me and valuable to each individual.
Harry, if I put you in prison and subject you to the public humiliation of a conviction, that would be as great a deterrent to you as death.
That it may be that I'm a shade sensitive. It may be that I'm ashamed to have my family put into such a shameful situation. But the greatest fear of all is still the loss of my life.
Harry, this is really in terms of your own sensitivities as a man. You're a man who is in favor of capital punishment, and at the same time as you sit here, the reason you are in favor of it is that you're talking about the richness, the uniqueness of life. How do you feel philosophically and personally? What sensitivities do you have about the actual thing that happens, a capital punishment? The fact that because of a horrible crime that was committed, a human being's life is taken away from him. You have to bite the bullet at some point to get over that.
The answer to that is that the general considerations of what is best for the community has to be considered. And when there is a flame of violence, as I said before, with this constant increase of murder that's going on, the increase is going on, not merely the murders, that something has to be done. And when you have emergency conditions, you resort to emergency cures.
But you don't resort to panic. And I think, Bill, Bill, I think you put up a very good point, and that it's a brutalization of the law to take deliberately, not in passion, but to deliberately take a life and end it.
Is it any the less a brutalization of the law to put a person in prison and rob him of his freedom and incarcerate him and give him nothing but a particular
Well, he has
type
the
of
opportunity
existence?
to reform, mentally reform. We have
reform
someone
if he's
here who has a
convi-
question. Well, somebody in our audience says, stop by. Yes, you have a question about capital punishment, sir.
Yes.
Introduce yourself first, please.
My name is James Wright, and I'm an ex-offender. Right now, I'm presently on parole. I would like to direct my question to the gentleman that's sitting in the middle.
Harry Lipsig, who is in
Harry
favor of
Lipsig.
capital punishment. Yes.
Yes.
I'm accustomed to attack.
First of all, I'd like to give my view about capital punishment. I'd like to give my own personal view about it, what I think about it. First of all I think it is a form of genocide for lower-class people. Like, as the gentleman said here in the beginning of the show, if you look at the statistics, you will see that everyone that has been executed has been poor people.
I think that point's very well taken.
Conditions are changing, and you're getting your minorities on the juries today, and they're releasing people to a great extent. All you have to do is follow the acquittals in the newspapers. And the amazing part about it, here's something that may surprise you.
And the people that get acquittals are the one with the money. That's the only people that gets acquittals in this country.
I agree. I think it's very little to do with minority race. It's money. It's the ability to buy a defense.
To buy your life.
And yet I'll give you an answer to that.
Yes.
Do you know that there are more and more of the minority groups where they are charged with a crime, including men that have had prior records, who are defending their lawsuits, the charges of crime against them themselves, even without an attorney, and you're getting acquittal after acquittal. It's an amazing thing that the public is not aware of, and yet it's happening. And so the poor man, even without money, can get justice today without question.
Are you seriously suggesting that a poor man defending himself up against you would do well because there's some minority members on the jury?
I am unimportant. The answer to that is the minority.
Well, okay, I'll say Lee Bailey, Edward Bennett Williams. I mean, really, Harry.
I
Why don't we
understand
do
your
this?
point.
To end this, I would like each of you to summarize what you feel would be accomplished or not accomplished, what the effect would be if capital punishment were generally reinstated. Why don't we begin with you, Tom?
Number one, it's not a deterrent. In fact, it works the other way. It causes juries to be less anxious to convict, and under the new Supreme Court decision, we'd have to make it mandatory. So the jury would know that they're sentencing an individual to death. Number two, it brutalizes society. Number three, it creates a certainty in the law where there's an uncertainty. For example, how many innocent people have been killed throughout the ages, murdered by the state when they were innocent.
And
We
also
have
the
cases like
double
the Christie-
standard where you
Exactly,
can kill the
that's my next point.
milkman and not be sent for sentenced to
Right.
being executed, and you can shoot a policeman and you would be. There's a double standard there. All right, now let's go to you, Harry Lipsig, for
I
your
do-
summary on capital punishment, what its effect would be.
In the
If
light of what
reinstated.
is happening throughout the country, there is a great need for a deterrent. And capital punishment, the fear of the loss of one's life, is the most important deterrent that one can conceive. And to speak as Dean Shapiro, with my high regard of him, speaks of necessarily having a definite decision by the jury just in favor of conviction for a particular, to a particular extent, is for me to rob the jury of its conscience and is to rob them of their right, in the light of the particular circumstances, to decide whether there should or shouldn't be mercy.
All right, we've heard your summary points, and I want to thank both of you for being here, and I hope this has given you something at home to think about. Thank you very much. Thank you for the question from the audience, and we will return with Elliot Gould right after this.
Biographer, journalist, and editor Stephen M. Silverman says about Spike Unleashed, "Go fetch the wee-wee pads. That's how hard you'll laugh." In his second picaresque romp, the masterful Spike the Wonder Dog has lost none of his bite. Self-important celebutantes and self-deluded social influencers, beware. You're no match for Spike's silver tongue. Talk about a wag. Order Spike Unleashed today. It's a roller coaster ride of comical suspense. OrderSpike.com takes you right to the Amazon order page. That's www.orderspike.com.